Thank you, Chancellor. Your Excellency, the Governor, Dr. Penny Wensley AO and Mr McCosker, Premier Anna Bligh MP, Chancellor John Story and Mrs Georgie Story, Senators, distinguished visitors, colleagues. Let me add my thanks and welcome to you this evening to celebrate the proclamation 100 years ago. So 100 years ago, the University of Queensland was created by the state. It was then funded by the state for many years until it was then funded jointly by the state and the Commonwealth and then ultimately by the Commonwealth. It was funded, by the way, to the tune of £10,000 per year. I sometimes think that the Commonwealth Treasury and Finance refer back to these numbers when they look at some of our current funding models. In the 70s, it was neglected and I suspect detested by the state in the 70s and the early 80s. But in the last 20 years, the state and the university have re-engaged in a very meaningful fashion. Of course, our major contribution to the state is through our graduates, the 180,000 that have graduated from the University of Queensland. Of course, not all in Queensland, but many. Not all of them stayed in Queensland, but many did. The university itself is now a very large business. It's a $1.2 billion a year business. So as an economic entity, it contributes. But especially in the last 20 years, the state and the University of Queensland have embarked on a series of specific engagements in a broad range of areas. In the innovation area, in primary industry, in health, in the resources and energy, in education, social services, environment, transport and infrastructure, just to name a number. And these engagements are now a key component of the business of the University of Queensland. We thank the state and we thank you, Premier, for your support of the university, both in terms of the infrastructure that you and your previous government have allowed us to build, but also in terms of the very meaningful engagement that we now have. Let's go back to the years of neglect. A few good things came out of those years. Well, the Premier of the day sent Lou Edwards out to the UQ Senate to sort out the lefties. So we gained Lou Edwards as a Chancellor. UQ also graduated a generation of politically engaged and perhaps somewhat cranky UQ students who later became elected, some making it all the way to Premier. And in hindsight, the first swallow of the summer might have been Micah Hearn, who was in fact the first UQ graduate to become Premier, 80 years after the university was established, which is interesting because for decades the university had been producing senior judges, doctors, captains of industry, but it took 80 years for the first to hatch a Premier, so to speak. We've since had three: Wayne Goss, Peter Beattie and our current Premier, Anna Bligh. And now even the Leader of the Opposition, John Paul Langbrook, is an alumnus. Now, I'm not implying that he will be the next Premier. So there has been a change. But one of the cranky students from the year of neglect, an arts graduate and sometime resident of Women's College, came full circle early this decade, resuming her close relationship with the University of Queensland when she became Minister for Education and then for State Development. Now she is the Premier, and we are honoured to have her here this evening on this extremely busy day, and my understanding is she is en route to a Powderfinger concert where she will mosh with the future. Now, if you don't understand what mosh means, you can either go to Google or you can ask a teenager. She will mosh with the future of the smart state. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Anna Bligh MP, Premier of Queensland.